Hey, good morning, afternoon, or evening, good people, wherever you are, wherever you happen to be, and however we're together. Thank you for being here. I'm Dave, and this is Dave's Head. So, what's in my head? You know, Throughout the course of our lives, we spend a bulk of our time either at home or pre COVID anyway, in the office, or just typically working. There's a widely acceptable stat that approximately 90,000 hours are spent by the average person in their lifetime working. Whether it's home or work, a toxic environment is not conducive to a longevity of happiness. A toxic environment at home, a toxic environment at work make up a huge percentage of your waking hours and even sleeping if you're home. So, a toxic environment there is not good for you. Intentional toxicity is something that to me speaks to the character of a person. Cultural toxicity, on the other hand, is more of a systemic problem, where individual toxicity is a personal problem. I'm talking about toxic environments because in the workplace or at home, you have powerful choices, right? To remove individual toxicity from your life. And I know people in my life right now that are going through both at home and at work toxicity. And it's one of those things where if you spend a bulk of your time in those two places, it's really hard to live a happy life when those two places are filled with toxicity. Individual toxicity is easier to get away from, to make the easy choice to choose yourself. Cultural toxicity is much more difficult. And you kind of have to ask yourself, especially if it's in the workplace, if the juice, and I love to say this, it's from the quote, the girl next door, um, but if the juice is worth the squeeze. And I think you have to apply that to the individual as well. But looking at work or cultural toxicity, is working through or working around or trying to change that culture of toxicity worth the squeeze? Conversely, with an individual, is keeping that individual in your life, is trying to see the positive in them, not necessarily ignore the negative, but reduce the impacts to yourself. Is that worth the squeeze? The problem is toxicity is a very dangerous thing because toxicity can impact you, infect you, and change your mindset and your outlook on life. And so again, you have to ask yourself whether it's in the personal individual or the work and cultural, if the toxicity is worth your time, your patience, your energy, and even ultimately your happiness. Because existing in toxic environments is something that can destroy you, can destroy your outlook on life, can destroy your willingness or willing ability to see positive people, to see the positive in situations, to try to make something better or make someone better. While neither of those are your jobs or responsibilities, we as human beings like to say that we made something better. Our impact on something was positive. But in a toxic environment, it makes it so much harder. So please consider and choose yourself, regardless of whether it's individual or cultural or a systemic problem of toxicity. Start with choosing yourself. And that's been my advice to those individuals going through both the individual and the cultural toxicity is to put yourself first. You can't exist in this space for a endless duration. No one can. Even a minute duration. It's just the weight of those things, the weight of those things can just bring you down, slow your life down to a grinding halt. The next thing that's on my mind is the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl, where there are people upset about Taylor Swift, there are people upset about the halftime show, there are people upset about the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. I think no matter what happens, the life that we live on this planet, someone will be upset. It's just natural. There's a whole segment of people, and I actually, believe it or not, missed the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. It was kind of on where I was at, but I didn't shift to the TV and focus on it when it was played. I actually was talking about people having a conversation about people being upset that it was even being performed at the Super Bowl, which, this is the month of love. I'm not going to focus on the hate and the other reasons why some people have a problem with it. Lift Every Voice and Sing. But the Chiefs got the W, and America continues to lose. What do I mean by that? I've seen numerous, and I mean numerous, conspiracy theories since the game. Even one person decided to produce a video that showed what they don't know or don't care is a production error. It incorrectly showed the down and distance for the Chiefs, and then showed them getting a first down on the next play when it really should have said second and short on the first play. And of course, there was a scramble for a first down, which made it a first down. But because it accidentally showed 1st and 10 to the person who didn't understand that it was a production error, not a, conspiracy theory to make the Chiefs win, there's all these people out there just feeding and eating and just gobbling up another conspiracy theory. For what reason? Because they're gullible. It's even before the game, there was the whole conspiracy theory that it was going to be the Ravens and the Chiefs. Look at the colors in the Super Bowl logo. Ravens lost. How'd that work out? But we've really got to stop being so gullibly ignorant. This is why people that like that orange clown are still relevant. That's why they keep him relevant, because common sense and facts just don't matter anymore. It's about feelings and hyperbole. It's about what seems to go along with your gripe or seems to go along with what you suspect to be some grand conspiracy. It's like you're waiting for a potato chip to hit the floor so you can say, damn it, that gravity, I told you. But now we got a new logo for Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans, which, by the way, I am so tempted to put myself in New Orleans next year for the Super Bowl. But now that the new logo is released, what's the new conspiracy matchup? Because if you look at the colors, I'm not sure we can find two teams. I mean, I got two in my head. I want to see if it becomes a conspiracy, because that would be wild considering the two teams it would be, because they're not good. But at least one of them aren't. But what's the new conspiracy for Super Bowl 59? Just curious about that. I'm curious what's next. What's the next thing that's going to shake the tree of those that are gullible and looking for a conspiracy? What's going to be? How are we going to turn the NFL is rigged into the next big conspiracy? If you've played the game of football, and I have for a long time, it's offensive to people who played the sport to say the NFL is fixed and rigged. It's just offensive. But people love their conspiracy theories. That's what they do. Adapt to Adopt was created for adoptees to have a safe space to be themselves. They provide recreational support to adopted children and youth through recreational support groups, a mentoring program, sports and community service projects, and more. Tap in on Wednesdays for Adapt to Adopt's What's Up Wednesday video series, an informational check-in update video for their supporters. You can watch it on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. For more information, visit their website at www.adapttoadopt.org. The last thing that's on my mind, sponsored by Adapt to Adopt, Valentine's Day. Now, I periodically, depending on the episode, my timing, my schedule, all that stuff, I'll record way before the episode drops, or sometimes I record right up to like the day before, which is not fun for post-production editing. Seriously, it's not fun. But today I happen to be recording on Valentine's Day. And while there isn't a ton of love in this country, I see a lot of love in my life. I'm very happy and fortunate for that to be the fact. From my own relationship to my circle of friends and family and their love journeys. It's one of the magical times of the year. But love is about navigating the smooth as well as the bumpy. How are you expressing your inner Cupid this year on Valentine's Day? I like to look at Cupid a couple different ways. There's a creative Cupid, there's the grandiose Cupid, there's the cookie cutter Cupid, and then there's the bad Cupid. Now I'll go in reverse order, meaning I'll go from what I consider the worst Cupid of that bunch to the best. Starting first with bad Cupid, right? So this is Cupid who, what they do, how they express their inner Cupid is either grossly inadequate in effort and creativity, or they're simply just missing in action. And this goes to what we're going to talk about with my guest called love languages, right? But the more you know your partner, and assuming you have a partner, but it's putting the effort in, whether it's a creative effort, whether it's a location or a place or a food or activity, it's putting some sort of effort in. But in this case, doing the opposite, not doing that, not putting effort in, not being creative, not figuring out a way to say I love you and express yourself, missing in action. The second is grandiose Cupid. Now, why is this the second lowest of the four? Over the top, they're extra, but gives some form of cookie cutter, not really creative, right? Throwing a bunch of covers for a lack of ability. It could be a home run as well, but it's just grandiose. It's big. It's extra. It's over the top, not needed. I shared a picture of roses that someone shared on Instagram. I believe it was yesterday. And I mean, this bouquet was huge. Like if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, it's as big as my hands are spread right now. It's the roses are that you can't even see the person's head, neck, or torso. That's how big they are. That's grandiose Cupid. Now, there's multiple styles of this, and I promise you that what I'm about to say is factual. 2 different women inboxed me about this. One said that was great, amazing, I would love to get something like that, and the other one said that's way too much. And I promise you, there are 2 different inboxes from 2 different women who said those things. And so that's why, there's a saying that less is more. When you get to those big types of things, especially in this day and age, it feels very social media thirsty, right? It doesn't feel like I'm saying I love you this much. It says I want people to see me telling you that I love you this much, right? And so rose bouquet this big can be this big. Now, by the time this comes out, I will actually have given my girlfriend what I plan to give her for Valentine's Day. Although we aren't celebrating on Valentine's Day, we're celebrating a couple days after. We want our own special day. I love that, by the way. But what I'll be giving is this big and this big and that big. Creativity. That's where I'm at. Which brings me to the next Cupid, cookie cutter Cupid. It's a safe Cupid. While potentially lacking in creativity, it could make up for it in effort. It's great for someone who you're giving this inner Cupid to, who doesn't require much but appreciates the gestures. This is also a Cupid that's connected to their partner's desires, love languages, happy triggers. And so cookie cutter Cupid is a safe Cupid because why? The risk of messing up is slimmer than the grandiose Cupid, right? The grandiose Cupid may do all of this, and you might have the girl who inboxed me and said, that's way too much. Whereas the cookie cutter Cupid may do this, and again, I apologize for those listening, I'm doing hand gestures, but may do just this, and that'd be perfect to that woman. The last Cupid is where I place myself, humbly. Creative Cupid thinks about their partner and gives based on their pleasure points. It's great for the simple partner or the complicated one because, again, it's based on their pleasure points. It can be a little cookie cutter or be a little grandiose because, again, you're thinking about their pleasure points. But it gives the most personal touch. You're locked in the most with your creativity because you understand who they are and what they desire. And you're trying to give based on that. Now, again, I'm the more creative V-Day giver. because I believe that birthdays, the day my partner took their first breath, if they didn't do that, I would not be with them, matter more. I believe that anniversaries, the day we became travelers walking on the same path, if we never decide to do that, we wouldn't have an anniversary, matters more. But however you give, if you're giving, give from the heart. Give from the heart. Don't waste people's time. Don't do grand gestures that are meaningless, whether you convey that it's meaningless or they detect it, because whether it's guy or girl, you can detect when somebody's just simply being grandiose but not being meaningful. A creative love, I'll say this twice, a creative love is endlessly a rewarding love. Say that again. A creative love is endlessly a rewarding love. That's what's in my head. So, during the month of love, there are many who struggle in relationships because of childhood trauma. Psychology Today published an article back in 2022 entitled 10 Ways Childhood Trauma Can Manifest in Adult Relationships. And they talk about, obviously, these 10 ways, and I'll go through them really, really quickly. The first one they talk about is fear of abandonment. Now, I've been pretty transparent in 5 seasons on this podcast, talking about my past, how I grew up, manifested to adult, and that type of thing. So fear of abandonment never was my thing. It never manifested itself, despite my past, into my adult life. But they talk about children who were neglected or abandoned by a caregiver often struggle with fear of abandonment long into adulthood. And this fear of abandonment can also manifest itself in a form of jealousy, in extreme cases, possessiveness. The second thing they talk about is getting irritable or easily annoyed with others. Now, they talk about their imperfections and quirks are tolerable, but they project that intolerance onto other partners and others around them. The third thing they talk about is needing a lot of space and time to yourself, which is something I completely relate to. Not sure if that is a product of my past or the fact that I'm a Capricorn. I have no problem traveling or spending time alone. I'll go what I call people watching a lot. But they talk about chaotic childhoods can lead to staying at home where you can control your surroundings, feel safer, and allows you to relax. They even talk about some extreme cases of social anxiety as a result of childhood trauma. The fourth thing, unequal financial and household responsibilities, something I can 100% relate to, just the nature of who I am. I tend to absorb the responsibility of finances and relationship and past marriage. I did the same thing. But their reasoning is there's a reluctance to rely on your partner, which makes you kind of want to take complete financial control. The fifth thing is settling and staying in relationships much longer than the expiration date, which unfortunately I can relate to. Now, they say when we grow up in unstable environments with caregivers who struggle with drug addiction, mental illness, or even illness or death, children often develop a sense of guilt that comes from wanting to end the relationship before we have had a chance to fix, quote unquote, fix the person. Again, this is something I relate to. I have what I think is a tendency, at least I did a lot in my past, I had a tendency to want to help people help themselves, even if they did not want to help themselves. Which I kind of agree with attributing that to some of the things I went through in my childhood, um, with the desire to always fix situations, always want to be the problem solver, which kind of bled into my professional life as well as a big data architect and big data. Number six, constant arguing or fighting in relationships or avoiding conflict at all costs. I'm more of the latter person. I'm not a big conflict person. I like to calmly talk about things, figure out solutions, again, fix the problem. But they say often children do not learn the skills necessary to have productive and healthy communication. This includes healthy and productive ways to navigate and manage conflict, which leads into number seven, not knowing how to repair after fights. Now, this is a long one. They talk about we do not learn how to have productive and healthy management of conflict. We also do not know how to repair a relationship after the inevitable conflict that happens in relationships. Now, my current relationship, we have not had really any big conflicts. Not that we've avoided them, we just really mesh well, which is something that's great. But they also look at this as this is can look like pretending something didn't happen, which is not a problem, but that's just a kind of follow up to that thought. Or not knowing when or how to compromise on the issue, or which I think is the worst thing to do, giving the silent treatment. Now, number eight, I have a past, a very monogamous past. Serial monogamy. This is often due to fears of being hurt again, fears of being alone, or even trying to prove that you're worthy of love. I wouldn't say I had the latter. I would say I kind of thought about the former, though. Throughout my life, many painful points and painful inflection points in my life. And so there was a sense of not wanting to be hurt, not wanting to commit, therefore, long periods of staying single. Number nine, worrying that you're settling, being fearful of committing, kind of touched on that one before, or avoiding relationships altogether. Because those who were unreliable or abandoned you in your past, it left you distrustful, which is completely understandable. A child's first love, the person who should care for them and cater to them the most, hurt them, abandon them. And so you have that fear of committing. You have a fear of someone actually genuinely love you when they say that you do, or they say that they do, excuse me. Last but not least, trying to change their partner. Now, they say this is a trauma response that comes from the belief that we need to do the best with what we have, or even the fear that we cannot do any better. Now, I would say I've never had the notion to want to fix somebody, but I've had the thought process of working around the deficiencies, or we call them on social media and public these days, red flags that people have. Not the best thing to do, obviously, because you reduce yourself in order to cater to deficiencies and things that aren't necessarily good for you generally. Now, this is the month of love. I think I coined it. I need to trademark it. I don't know. Anybody else has said that. But in the month of love, the first episode of the season, we talked about relationships and being the best you that you can be. In this relationship, we're talking about getting past pain, which is why I'm talking about the things I'm talking about. With that, let me bring in my guest for this episode, Paul Zolman. He is a love language linguist. Check that out. Love language linguist. He's author of Love is God, creator of Roll of Love Dice, which I can't wait to talk about that. His childhood experience was one that was the opposite of love. From that, a distaste formed inside of him. He searched for and eventually created a method that transformed his life from anger to loving everyone. Welcome to Dave's Head, Paul. How's it going?
Great, Dave. Thank you for letting me be on your show. Looking forward to this conversation.
Great. Thank you for coming on. I'm very, very curious about a bunch of things and a bunch of topics we can talk about. But before we get started, I know I gave a small intro for you, but as I always like to do with my guests, I like them to introduce themselves in their own words. So if you could take a moment, tell the people who you are, what you do, and what you're about.
Thanks, Dave. I think your background's very similar to mine in a lot of ways. I'm also a Capricorn, so I don't know what that means to be a Capricorn, but I am a Capricorn, and maybe that has a lot to do with what I wanted to do. I tried to fix problems in my life, and it just came out wrong. I had this yearning to not want to be angry, and it was like a double negative. If I declared I don't want to be angry, it's just those two negatives only works in math, that you multiply two negative numbers together, then you come out with a positive. It wasn't working in relationships. So I thought, I got to find something that's really going to work. And it really came to a head about 15 years ago when I was single, dating. My, these flashes of anger that I was having were part of the cause of the demise of my first marriage. What I found I was doing, I was just stacking annoyance on top of annoyance on top of annoyance on top of annoyance until one would be the straw that broke that camel's back, and I'd have this flash of anger. I didn't want to do that anymore. I just thought that was inappropriate in public, inappropriate in private, just inappropriate in a lot of different ways. But it came to a head, as I mentioned, 15 years ago when I was dating and had someone I was serious with, and took it to my brother's house for big brother approval. I'm number 10 of 11 children, Dave, and uh, as number 10 of 11, I always need big brother, big sister approval. So I was getting that at the time. First thing that happened when I went in there is they pulled this woman aside and told her point blank, my sister-in-law was one that was telling her point blank, the only emotion that the Zolman family learned growing up was anger. At first I denied. I said, then it made me mad. And I thought, I just verified exactly what she just said. I still had those anger feelings, and I realized that I have an opportunity right here, right now, to either change that perception of my family or keep it the same. I decided, you know what, I've got to try to change that. And so I started reading books like The Color Code and then The Five Love Languages. I really liked the principles of the five love languages. Dr. Gary Chapman is a Baptist pastor, and he first published a book in 1992, many years ago. But I thought this really is solid, the principles, but I didn't get it. From where I came from, Dave, I just did not get what he was trying to say. You mean, Dr. Chapman, if I guess what Dave's love language is and I cater to that, Dave and I are going to be buddies. Dr. Chapman, I'm a bad guesser. It wasn't working so far in my life up until that point. Why do you think it would work now? I'm still a bad guesser. It's not working. Well, the second thing that Dr. Chapman had was, well, if you take this survey, then you can find out what your own love language is. Well, what the heck am I supposed to do with that, Dr. Chapman? Advertise? Hello, Dave. I'm gifts. Today's Valentine's Day. Show me you love me by giving me a gift. I really thought about making a badge and put it on my shirt and say, "Hello, I'm gifts. Gifts is my love language. Here's my Venmo QR code." I mean, it's just awkward. That wasn't working for me either. So I thought, you know what? I liked games growing up, even as dysfunctional as our family was growing up. I thought games brought the family together. So I thought, well, why can't I make this a game so that I could learn the love languages? After 4 or 5 times reading the book, Dave, I still didn't get it. If someone offered me $1 million to name all 5 love languages after I read it 4 or 5 times, I probably wouldn't win that. I might get 2 or 3, but I wouldn't be able to get all 5. So I went through the book, but the book didn't go through me. It just wasn't resonating inside me, wasn't sticking, so to speak. And so I contacted Dr. Chapman and asked him, are you licensing each one of those icons, those pictures that you have for each one of the love languages? And after a couple of weeks, his attorney wrote back and said, no, we're not doing that. So I had a friend that was an attorney in my neighborhood. Turns out he was a copyright attorney, intellectual property attorney. And I went to him with the idea, and he said this. He said, theory, like the love language theory, is not copyrightable. Application is. So they weren't doing it as a game. So I thought, and through the advice of this attorney, I made my own little icons, and then I put it on a dice, made it into a game. This is the game. It's just 1 inch by 1 inch cube that I put pictures on, pictures that would denote each love language. This one, you see a hand holding an hourglass representing time. The next one looks like a waiter holding a platter representing service. 2 hands put together forming a heart. This heart has a conversation fly out from it. So this would be the words from the heart. Those would be the words. The next one is 2 hands, looks like they're ready to hold hands. That'd be touch. And then the last one would be gifts. 5 love languages, Dave, 6 sides on the cube. This last one I created is actually a hand holding a question mark. That's what I call surprise me. Just 2 instructions. You just roll the die every day. Whatever it lands on, Dave, that's the love language you practice giving away all day that day. As you were doing your monologue earlier, I noticed that some of those characteristics of that abandonment, some of the characteristics of being abused when you're a child, was that you're critical of a lot of other people and just focusing on what they're doing wrong, because that's what was really passed down to you. That was passed down to me. Everybody was focusing on what Paul was doing that was wrong, and just almost hyper focused on that, so it actually became larger. I like to compare it to a magnifying glass, that whatever you magnify is going to get larger. Why would you magnify the faults of another person? And by doing that and by expressing that to that person, guess what they're looking at you for? They're looking at your faults. Why would anybody choose to do that? And I realized that focusing and being critical in that way was just part of the outcome of that upbringing. I wanted to get away from that. I thought, why am I critical of that other person? And I thought, well, that's because they didn't have any boundaries. Part of that angry culture that you grow up with is you grow up without boundaries. One of those boundaries that I had to draw was that I'm not in charge of what that other person chooses to do in their life. And when I put up that fence, put up that boundary, and realized I can't be peeking over the fence, looking at what they're doing, especially what they're doing wrong, and then be critical about it. I don't have that permission to do that. I need to focus on the love that I send out, and then how to respond when that love comes my way. This dice provided me that avenue on that paradigm shift as an about face for me, Dave. Instead of watching for what's wrong with that person, Now, as I roll the die, I'm watching for what can I love about that person, what's right about that person, and I'm now focusing on 80 to 90% of that, the good of that person, letting go of that 10 to 20% of what might be bad or weaknesses or faults that that person might have. This changed in my life.
Gotcha. And so, speaking about the love language and your die game,
Mm-hmm.
um, typically we rank love languages, right? Words of affirmation to me is last, but giving gifts, what's it, word affirmation, physical touch, quality time, those types of things. We rank them what our preferences all the time. We do that all the time. But can you speak to how your die game kind of takes that, removes that away by doing something daily, but also you talk about giving your love languages away. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody, according to Dr. Chapman's theory, and I absolutely agree with this, everybody has a primary way that they want to be loved. He distilled it down to five love languages, and that's why we have the five love languages. But as you roll the die, what it's doing is it's actually taking you a little bit out of that comfort zone. Dr. Chapman would suggest that if you want something, then you give it away, and then in hopes that it'll come back. I don't believe that. I think that reciprocity makes it a business transaction. This is not a transaction. This is not let's make a deal. It's not a reality show, Dave. We're trying to send out love without any regard of whether it comes back or not. But trusting the laws of the universe that were in place before you or I were ever born, the law of the harvest, the law of karma, the law of attraction. All those laws say that whatever you send out someday is going to come right back to you. You trust those laws, but you send it out. When you're sending it out, you're sending it out without any regards that it's coming back from that person immediately or any time in the future. You're putting money into a piggy bank, so to speak, so that someday you'll be able to draw back on that when you need it, and it'll come unabated. It'll come all by itself, all back to you. When you're rolling the die and you do it over a 30-day period, you actually will have given away all five love languages so that you really know them backwards and forwards. This is different than what Dr. Chapman suggests. He suggests that if you have a significant other, find out what their love language is and say, put them in that box that the survey puts them into and say, you get to eat tacos, Dave, the rest of your life because I know that's what you like. Every meal, you're going to get tacos. I don't do that. I think that the variety is really a spice of life, that we're sending it out all day long, not only to your significant other, but to everybody. Dave, I was single when I created this, so I didn't have anybody I said, Dr. Chapman, who the heck am I supposed to love? I don't have a significant other. And then I realized, oh, I just get to love everybody. It was perfect for me, Dave, because I don't know anybody that's with their significant other 24/7. Some people don't want to be with their significant other 24/7, unfortunately. But there's people all around all the time, and to put me into a position of a character change or a culture change, I had to have that consistency to be able to send out love all day long on a consistent basis, regardless of what was coming back my way. I realized through this process that I can't bid love to come my way. I can't tell you to love me, Dave, or I can't tell you how to love me in any way because that makes you almost duty bound. Again, we're back to the transaction. You don't want that in your life. You want love given away freely and just and then it'll come back freely as well. It's one of those boomerangs that you want in your life. You don't want to send out anger and have that boomerang come back to you 10 times worse than what you send it out.
Gotcha. And just real quickly, I'm sure my audience chuckled a little bit when you mentioned tacos every day because anybody who knows me knows I love tacos, and I'd be perfectly happy in any love language eating tacos for the rest of my life. But you touched on something that I think is pretty important, which is transactional relationships. And I think if you scour social media, you look at the way relationships are done a lot today, they become very, very much transactional,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you look at between men and women. Can you talk about just that, how that's degraded relationships in your eyes? And is there a way, is this your game a way to get around that, or are there other steps people can take to get less transactional?
Good question, Dave. And what I want to say is just this, that if you can help someone become endeared to you, or you become endeared to them, if you can have facilitate that in any way, it's actually over and above any value that any transaction would ever have. So in a transaction, there's value given for value, and then you're done. It's over. This is building a relationship that's long term, a relationship that's going to last for a lot longer than the time frame of the transaction. That's what I'm talking about. So we're building a life, building a character in ourselves, something that we send out, who we are and how we feel about other people, by giving this away without any regards of it ever coming back. Just planting those seeds that you may harvest or somebody else might harvest. Just for an example, I've been doing this for quite some time. I got the copyright for the die in 2017, but just the other day, about a month ago, I was riding my e-bike to about 2.5 miles away to the Chick-fil-A for breakfast. Thought I'd just treat myself to a breakfast sandwich. And when I got there, I realized I was patting my pockets and realized, oh dang, I forgot my wallet, forgot my money. And so I was already standing in line. There was one person in front of me in line, and then there was one other person that was standing aside waiting for his food. So he sees me patting my pockets. I said out loud, oh, dang, I forgot my money. He must have heard me because I walked right back outside, put my helmet on, and then that guy that's waiting for his food comes out and says, come on back in, I'll buy your breakfast. And he hands me a $20 bill, says, just give me the change. Well, my breakfast was only $4, but then I gave him his change. And then it's just that moment, I realized that, you've got to accept people's kindness. And there's nothing I could do to give him back. I didn't have any money to give him back. Just for the satisfaction of him helping out, that's more priceless than any transaction could have been. That's what we're looking for. That's the feeling that you're looking for, is that deep satisfaction of making someone else have a better day. So one other thing about this, Dave, that while you're rolling the die and finding that genre of that love language that you're practicing giving away all day that day, you might light up, as I call it, 3 to 10 people a day or more. When they light up, no longer, Dave, do you have to say, excuse me, could we pause this relationship for a moment while I have you take this survey so I know how to love you? You don't have to do that awkward stuff anymore. You watch with just use your observation skills. Watch, when they light up, you've discovered a primary or maybe even a secondary love language, one of their top two or one or two love languages that they like, something on the top of their list. And then you just make a mental note of that, and then for that person, wash, rinse, and repeat. There's great satisfaction in making someone's day. It's going to help you right away, but it's also planting those seeds for love to come your way in the future.
No, I like that, and especially I like. So you've hit two of my love languages already. You hit tacos and now Chick-fil-A. A third one, I got to send you a gift card or something. Um, but so I like the idea. First, I'm a huge, huge believer in karma. So what you put out comes back, and it varies how many folds it is. But it's why I try to put positivity out. It's why I try to get back a lot as well. But we're talking about relationships and also single people. So I talked about in my monologue about being, serial monogamous, a serial single person for a while. Um, how does this help single people or people who are serial monogamous that may have had some childhood trauma get from where they are in that stage or phase that they're in into wanting and having more loving relationships?
Great question, Dave. And as I mentioned, I created this when I was single, and I needed that. And it was shortly after that first divorce. I needed that because I felt like if that was the assessment from my sister-in-law, I needed to improve myself and become a better person, and just try to let go of that anger from the past. It took me, Dave, until about age 35 to stop blaming my father for all the stacking of annoyances and having those flashes of anger. It took me that long to stop blaming him. And by stopping blaming him, I realized that I really am responsible for my own stuff. I can't blame anybody else. And when you are playing the victim and blaming someone else for your actions, you're not going to improve. You don't have to change. It's their fault. Go talk to them. It's their fault that I'm the way I am, which is really kind of ridiculous. We're all in charge of our own self. And if we really seriously think about it, we are in charge. And I think that single people, if they can 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 uh, if they can figure out what they're doing and put an adjective to it. For example, let's take sarcasm. If they can think that, oh, I'm a little bit sarcastic, and that kind of might bite people, might hurt them a little bit. If you take that adjective, what helped me most, Dave, get out of that situation that I was in, and would help single people as well, is find out what the opposite is. The opposite of sarcasm to me would be someone that would be genuine, someone that would be authentic rather than sarcastic. When you put sarcasm or being genuine or authentic all on the table, you're most likely to choose, well, I want to be genuine, I want to be authentic. When you get to that point, that self-actualization point of where you are at right now, at this point in time, that's the point in time you can start making goals and have an understanding of that's it, where you are on the spectrum from anger to love. When you understand that point, then you can make goals and set goals and start tracking your progress toward getting to that authentic or that loving side of being a person, a better person. Improve yourself if you're single, improve yourself to the point that you'll actually start attracting people that are loving people. I found, Dave, that when I had these flashes of anger, I would repel people. I was like the guy in the swimming pool that had an accident. Everybody's scattering away from that person because saying it wasn't me, wasn't me, wasn't me. And then you're set all alone. I did not want to repel people like that with the anger. And I found that as you send out love, you're actually attracting people. People will want to be in loving arms of anyone, just someone that really cares, someone that will really send out that understanding. If you're single, you can find people, if you can be that person, just focus on, stay in your lane, focus on sending it out every day, watching for people that light up, watching how what you send out, the reaction of other people, and then just keep doing that. Wash, rinse, repeat. Do that all day long. It's really going to change your life.
No, I love that because it creates that pattern of positivity, regardless of what the result is. And if you just, it's kind of like the hammer and the chisel. You just keep hammering it away. At some point, you're going to break through with that person who comes into your life who can give you the love that you absolutely need. And now you've hit a third love language. So I got to send you a gift card, which is sarcasm because I love sarcasm. Um, so tacos, Chick-fil-A, and sarcasm. But let's take a step back. And when you first introduced yourself, you talked about your childhood, you talked about your family, but let's talk about some of your childhood experience that led you here and how it hardened you. Um, and if you could talk about what was that tipping point, if it was that divorce you already talked about or that first marriage, but what was the tipping point that got you from hate to anger to love?
I don't, I don't really like to brand it as hate, Dave. That didn't really start that way. It's more of an irritation, thinking that I had the privilege of being irritated at something someone else was doing, and it's really never was my privileges, never was a privilege of mine. But I really believe that that culture of anger that has no boundaries said I could talk over anybody because what I have to say is more important than anything they're saying. It's all the put downs, putting someone down so that you elevate yourself. It's doing all those type of things in that angry culture that you just build that resentment. That why in the heck am I repelling people? Why don't people why I'm not a magnet? Why do I repel people? And it's just when you get to that point, and I was at that point several times, but just didn't know how to solve the problem. And I realized that solving the problem is just what you send out. And I was sending out criticism, and I thought, why why am I doing that? Why am I just focused on on what's wrong with that person instead of what's right with that person. And that was just it was overnight of just rolling the die. Within that first 30-day period of doing that, it was a paradigm shift that instead of looking to the right or looking to the left, I was looking the opposite direction now. And I was so busy focused on what was right about that person that I stopped. I didn't have time to be annoyed. I didn't have time to focus on what was wrong with that person. Start focusing on what was right. Some of those things that brought that to pass was that I my father was an alcoholic. I would say his favorite thing to do was take my mother out, and I love the whole idea that he did it consistently. He did it every single Friday night. I can't keep that up myself, Dave. I don't know anybody that's really good at keeping it up the way my father did every single Friday night. He just wasn't creative about it. It was always the Maverick Bar, always over alcohol. And so I can imagine, I never was there, Dave, but I can imagine my mother starting at the oldest child. So by the time my mother gets down to child number 10, me, he's had all these annoyances all stacked up. I'm the straw that breaks the camel's back. I felt that I got the brunt of the anger that was built up in my father, either in a form of a spanking or severe punishment in one way or another. One spanking I remember was I remember being black and blue for more than 3 weeks. And it was just that type of situation. There was physical abuse, mental abuse. I mean, it was socially, sexual abuse. All the kind of abuses that you can think of were all in my family growing up. It was just an angry family. And it just, age 17, I made the declaration that most 17 or 18-year-olds make. I'm not going to be like my parents. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to conquer this world. I'm going to do the best I can, and I'm going to be different than my parents. Every 17-year-old that I know makes that declaration, or they say, even if their parents were good, they say, I'm going to be better than what my parents were. There's got to be a way to do that. I made that declaration. But also, when I was 17, I I took one of those career tests, and that career test said that I'd be a great IRS agent. Well, at that time, Dave, I was just really trying to keep the rules. And I know IRS agents like to keep rules, and they want you to keep the rules too. I didn't want to be an IRS agent, but I graduated from college after 22 years of going to college, finally graduated and got an accounting degree. Accounting's all about rules. So it didn't stray too far from what that 17-year-old survey did when I was 17. It didn't stray too far from that. Became a CFO of a public company, and mostly did finance and accounting throughout my life, keeping the rules. That's kind of the pigeonhole that I was put into growing up. I did not want the wrath of my father. Did not want to do that. But I was sandwiched between two girls. Remember how my father loves the women in his life and cherishes the women. If I look cross-eyed at one of my sisters, my older sister, my younger sister, I was already in trouble. But I was already in trouble from the annoyances that my older brother started causing. And so it was kind of the convergence of all that happening on me. I just felt targeted at number 10 of 11 children.
Wow, and it takes to do full circle to where we began. It takes a lot of love to get away from that anger and that feeling and all the experience that you had. Um, and that segues me to love is God. Can you talk about that? And I don't know if the genesis of it is religion, but in a world and country where religion or the amount of people who are religious is kind of shrinking, um, does it reach, or do you think that book reaches your target audience? Um, and what is what do you hope they get from the book?
So, so actually, in my bio, Dave, and I realize that it's my fault for writing it that way. The first line of my bio says, "The author of love is God," and you
Mm,
could say, "The author of love is God." And I mean, you could
mm,
read it in two different ways, but the way I wrote it, I meant the author of love is God. So love is the God's the genesis of love. He sends
mm,
it down to us. That's not the name of the book that I wrote. So
Okay.
just for a correction, the name of the book I wrote is called The Role of Love, and it's a book about these experiences that I've had and about testing this cube with many other people, testing it with a family of 5 children, and the youngest is 4 years old. The 4 year old one day, and each child rolled their own for the day, and that's how they administered it in that family. But the 4 year old one day rolled physical touch. So when he rolled that, he's jumping up and down, pumping his fists and saying, "Yes, physical touch, physical touch." And immediately he goes and beats up on his brothers. He thought, Dave, that gave him permission to go beat up on his brothers. Well, obviously, the bigger brothers were expressing love, apparently. They thought it was love in that way. But it gave it, with the mothers trying to suppress the laughter, saying, I didn't expect that outcome, trying to suppress all that laughter and saying, son, this would be appropriate physical touch. You can do the high five, you can do a fist bump, you can create a fancy handshake, you can give a hug, or you can do a chest bump. 4 year old doing a chest bump, practicing to be in the NFL, I'm sure. And you could do all those things, but you can't beat up on them. And so it became a teaching moment for that child. That's what the book's about, is those moments of being authentic, moments of being genuine in that way, the role of each one of those, the role of touch, and just expound a little bit on each one of the love languages and how it plays a role in our lives, how it can impact our lives for the good and impact the lives of others, those that are all around us. I'm taking this to the schools as well, Dave, and trying to teach children that appropriate physical touch, the appropriate way to love. And I'm finding that children are responding very, very positively to it. I'm doing the test in K through 6 for right now, so kindergarten through 6th grade. So the teacher or the student will roll the die at the beginning of the day. It takes less than 2 seconds. The teacher then may take 30 to 45 seconds. So the whole thing's less than a minute, 30 to 45 seconds to say, class, this is the type of behavior we're watching for today. These are the type of things that you can do. At the end of the day, then the last 10 to 15 minutes of the day in every classroom across the world, Dave, is really non-productive time. The kids have been there all day. They're antsy. They know the bell's going to ring. Their minds are mush. They've been, there's just been too much put into that mind all day that day. It's non-productive time. Teachers have told me this all around the world, and I absolutely agree. So let's take that non-productive time and let's have that child now record what they rolled, opportunities they saw to love in that way, what they did about those opportunities, and write about their day. This does a couple of things, Dave. First of all, it puts the responsibility for behavior right back on that child's shoulders. I was 35 years old, Dave, before I realized that I'm responsible for my own stuff. This tamps that down so that now a 6 year old or a 7 or 8 or 9 year old is responsible for their own actions. The teacher's not that responsible, and the teachers are responsible. The principal is responsible, but it lessens the burden on the administration of that classroom now to the student, where it should be. The student's responsible for their behavior. They have to write about it. What did they love, or what opportunities did they have loved that day? What did they do about those opportunities? Secondly, it becomes a love journal. The teacher will just put a check mark on that page of the journal, send it home with the child, and so not really a grade, because how can you grade what that child did? But sends it home with the child. The parents now will take that journal page and collect them throughout the year, keep them in chronological order. I would bind that, and now you've got a journal of that 1st grader, or a journal of that 3rd grader, or the 5th grader. I would have loved to have a journal like that from my own 1st grader, Dave. There was such a contrast from going to school and being in a more loving environment than from my home, that I remember my 1st grade teacher, Mrs. Rogers. She was the best. She was probably in her 60s and probably was very close to retirement. In fact, I think she did retire a couple of years after she had me in that first grade class. I don't remember second, third, fourth, or fifth grade. I do remember sixth grade teacher, but I would have loved to have a journal about that and what it was that I loved about that particular class. This is something that we can provide for the children, provides that foundation now of love. I think that these love languages are really foundational. They are the stair steps that will get you to the higher laws of love. Instead of the stacking of annoyances that I was doing before, Dave, now I'm stacking kindness on top of kindness on top of kindness on top of kindness to get to the higher laws of love, like charity or compassion or forgiveness or mercy or intimacy or sympathy or empathy or trust. Any of those are higher laws of love. These are really the lower laws of love, the basics. This is the literacy level that we really all should be at, knowing all five love languages so that we can stair step to those higher laws.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you've done the data analysis with this, but I'm curious with going into the schools and impacting the younger generation or next generation. Um, how do you see or how have you observed this impacting school violence? And we're in a culture where we could go back 20 years and the
Mhm.
school shootings and mass shootings just keep happening and keep happening. And we go back and we look and we say, oh, this guy or this girl showed these signs throughout these last couple of years and nobody did anything.
Yeah.
Have you looked at that analysis and how this could or does impact school violence?
Well, the only thing I've done, Dave, is like in my own life. Instead of focusing on the negative parts of life and focusing on the negative things that other people do and talking about that, instead of doing that, I'm focusing on what's right with that person. It's this the magnifying glass again. What you magnify is going to get bigger. If you focus on the mistakes of a person, it's going to get bigger. Who needs that? Especially parents listening to this, why would you focus on the mistakes that children are making? Focus on what they did right. Emphasize that and make that grow larger. And I think that as we do that, and it's the about face for these children, instead of focusing on those on what Jimmy did or what Johnny did, instead of focusing on those bad things that kids are doing, focus now on what they're doing that's right. And I think that's and we switch that focus, that paradigm shift, and train them to do that on a regular basis, it's going to automatically tamp down the violence. Who knows what projecting that might look like in the future, but I can assure you that as you're focusing on positive things, you're not going to have those negative type things happen as often. They may still happen for those that really repel and decide that they're not going to do this. It's their own conscious decision that says, I'm not going to love. I just refuse to love. We can't help those people until they're ready to help themselves. We really can't help anybody that doesn't want to have that change in their life. But as in those primary years, I believe that we can build a foundation, Dave, that will last not only in their grade school years, but carry on into the junior high, high school, college level, and into their life. We've got to build the foundation, and I think we have to start with this younger generation. People like me, old people like me, can change. I did it, but we've got to have that desire. And I don't think there's a lot of people out there with the desire right now because they're focusing on what's wrong. That person pulled in front of me. I'm going to tail them. I'm going to make them feel the pain of doing that pull in front of me when it was just an innocent thing.
Um, Guilty at times. I'll say that, but we'll move on from that. I will say that I do agree that a foundation of positivity breeds more positivity. So I definitely agree with that, and I hope that even existentially, what you're doing is impacting and reducing the possibility of some of those negative things happening with your youth. So definitely, I definitely like that solution. Simple solutions for complex problems. For over 15 years, SRE Solutions has provided today's solution to prevent tomorrow's problem. SRE Solutions will provide you effective, efficient, robust, and reliable business intelligence, application and website design, wired and wireless network installation, PC support services, and much, much more. For more information, visit their website at www.sresolutions.org. That's www.sresolutions.org. So now for my favorite segment with my guests called First Thoughts, sponsored by SRE Solutions Inc. The way First Thoughts works, Paul, is I have a word or a phrase that I'll give you. The idea is what's your first thought? For my audience out there, as I always say, if this is your first time tuning in, shame on you, but I'm happy you're here. Paul, are you ready for some first thoughts?
Let's hear it. I'm looking forward to this, Dave. Maybe Chick-fil-A or tacos will be one of the answers I spit out.
Okay. Well, the first one I like to start with a sort of a softball, but I think it's more complicated than I think. If I say therapy to you, what's your first thought?
First thought is that there's a great place for therapists. I have a nephew that is a therapist. I've been to some therapy sessions, both as a couple and individually. I think that those people are there to guide you. But again, back to the question of if someone's willing to change, it works. If someone doesn't have a desire to change, I don't believe interventions really
Mm,
help that much. You've got to have a
yeah,
huge disruption for for that to make a change really in their life. But I'm
yeah.
for therapy.
Okay. Next first thought is it's kind of it's I'm going to use a word, but I'm thinking all those types of holidays, anniversaries, that type of thing. So I'm going to say Valentine's Day trauma, but I'm more speaking in the sense of any of those giving type of or expected giving day traumas. What's your first thought?
First thought is that I had a individual that I was dating that used to call Valentine's Day, instead of calling it Valentine's Day, called it Single Awareness Day. That if you have no one to love or no one to give, no significant other, it really kind of, emphasizes the point that, oh, I'm single. Doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have to be that way. And I really, with the dice, I believe that and with determining that you're going to send out love every single day. Every day is Valentine's Day for me, and I love that. I love the whole part about giving. One of the things that has really been overarching on the about the dice is the giving of gifts. I have a son that one day he rolled gifts. He says, "I'm not doing that. It's too expensive. I don't want to do that." Then he rolled it again, and he got gifts again. He rolled it 4 times, Dave, and he
Mm-hmm.
got gifts every single time. He says, "Oh, I guess I give a gift." You don't need to be intimidated by gift giving on a special occasion like you're talking about. A hug could be a gift. A note could be a gift. Spending time with someone could be a gift. Making somebody dinner could be a gift. It's kind of the umbrella love language of gifts. Just do it from your heart and make every occasion a special occasion. I love all the holidays, and I've just kind of turned my own paradigm shift with that, Dave, is that I turn every holiday into a special holiday that for my wife. I say, this is my ex-wife's birthday. Let's celebrate. You'll get a little laugh out of her or something, but
Interesting.
it's just that we celebrate every special moment and make every moment special. It doesn't have to be someone else that declared it a holiday. It could be the birth of my niece or my nephew. We're going to celebrate because of that.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to celebrate my ex's birthday in that context. But I shout out to you, kudos to you for doing that.
I
I
don't
will say
tell
I
her
actually
I don't tell her that I'm doing it for that, but I said this is a
uh,
special day, so I just kind of cloak it.
gotcha. Okay, that makes more sense. I actually talk about some of this in my opening segment, where I talk about Valentine's Day is not really that big of a day to me. I like to celebrate, the birthday of my spouse because she wouldn't be here if she wasn't born. I like to celebrate anniversary, the day we started something down the same path together. Those types of holidays. Now, granted, New Year's is kind of one of my big holidays because it starts a whole new year, a new chapter
Mhm.
in our lives, especially if it's with somebody that you love. Those are the type of holidays I celebrate. Valentine's Day, I kind of do some things. I'm very creative with gift giving, but it's not my strongest. It's not my most important holiday. Not strongest, most important. Um, Last first thought is mental health. What's your first thought?
First thought about mental health is I think that it's really something that's needs to be addressed here in the United States and around the world. That I think we can do better. We can focus on our own first, and this obviously is an appropriate way to stay in your lane, focus on your own, quit focusing on the mental health of another person. They're going to need to recognize it, or if they don't recognize it, maybe they'll have a friend, someone that'll put their arm around them to help guide them in the right direction. I think it's another uh, another guidance tool that we're talking about. It's a way that people can become better people, better in a lot of different ways, better in their relationships, better in what they say, better in what they think. It helps define the paths of thought that we really need defined. It's really going to tamp down the violence as well. I think everybody needs some suggestions in every way.
No, I definitely agree with that. I think I throw in mental health periodically in first thoughts, especially if it relates to something like this where there's
Mhm.
trauma, which is a big mental health catalyst, if you will, um, because it's we don't speak about it until something bad happens. We don't
Mhm.
talk about the preventative stuff we can do, the healing stuff we can do. We always talk about how to fix something after something bad happens. And so I like to get the thought about mental health sometimes from my guests. But I definitely agree with that. We've got to do a much better job, and how we do that, you know, uh, there's many solutions, but we got to start somewhere. We definitely do.
Absolutely, Dave, and I absolutely agree with that. And I love that you brought the word healing up, because I think a synonym for love is healing. When we send out love, we're making someone's day, we're actually sending out healing to that person, and that's lifting that person in some one way or another. If we get to the point that we're trying to heal one another in that way by sending love out, I think that the mental health, sending that type of mental health, that's a healthy mindset. That's what we're looking for.
Absolutely. So this season, just like last season, we started. I turned over the power to my guest in a segment I call "To First Thoughts," which is a brainchild of my now girlfriend, back then not my girlfriend, who thought up this idea to have my guest actually throw a first thought at me during our recording. So, Paul, it was your opportunity to throw a first thought my way. What's your first thought for me?
I'm going to say religion.
Hmm. So I was raised Baptist, very religious when I was younger.
Mhm.
Joined the Boy Scouts from the church that I was a part of. But once my grandmother died, I kind of strayed away from religion in the sense that I wasn't going to church every Sunday. I wasn't, going to vacation Bible study. I wasn't doing all the things. I still maintained Boy Scouts, but I didn't feel the pull of being in a church anymore. Um, and so even today, I attend or I go to churches for either very positive reason like weddings or a very bad reason like funerals. But I don't really attend services. My thinking beyond behind that is I'm very spiritual at this point in my life, and so the lessons that come from going to church, the morals that a lot of people, or hopefully you pick up from going to church, um, can be achieved without the church, and that you can be a good person without relying on the foundation or the backing or the teachings of a church to do that. And I think if we if we can have that ability to be individual in the sense of we can set our own morals, we can be good people without the rewards of a church or rewards of a, what is it called? I used to get it when I was a kid. Not dues. What do we used to get as a kid? Um, we get money from our parents. I can't remember what the word is right
Allowance.
now.
Mhm.
Allowances. Thank you. Without the rewards of that come from the church, the public persona, without those things, we can just be good people generally. Then I can be spiritual and be just as good as someone who is very religious.
Perfect. Yeah, I think religion does help people, help good people be better and bad people try to be good, and that's the whole
Yeah.
purpose of it. So I think that
Yeah.
if there is a way that it can help us in that way, then I'm for it. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think religion definitely focuses the positivity in some people, right? It's the foundation, it's the Bible scriptures, it's the
Mhm.
participation in the community. There are ways that religion has that ability to um, structure how someone can be a good person. Because some people need that structure, that guidance. They need to walk a certain path in order to have that result. Where others they can be a good person without that structure and that foundation or those teachings. I think there's there are more than ways skin a cat, right? That's how we say it. More than
Yeah,
one way.
absolutely. You know that Dr. Chapman was a Baptist pastor. I don't know if
Hmm.
you knew that, but and he
Did not.
said that the love language is actually reconciled to the life of Jesus Christ. So that's I'm Christian, and that's what really kind of attracted me to that. The love languages really wanted to be more like him, and at least what the writings say about him, and be that person that had people attracted to him for the love
Hmm.
that he gave out. You know, Isaiah says that he wasn't, well, you know, he was comely. It was just nothing to look upon, but that just the fact that the emanation of that love that he had for individuals. I wanted to get to that
Hmm.
point that I would feel love toward all individuals, and I really think that's an equalizer, Dave. That it we really don't need diversity. We just need someone that says that's a person. I'm going to love them regardless. They
Hmm.
are another individual, regardless of race, color, sexual orientation. Doesn't matter what there is about that person, personality. They are a person for that reason. I need to express love in to that person in one way or another, something that they'll accept.
No, absolutely. And quick fun fact before we go, I actually still remember my very first song that I sung in the children's choir, which I kind of sung it sort of in a very bad way because I couldn't remember the exact words, but I remember 90% of the words. The Bible song was the first song I had a solo. You know, it's your parents come, they're all proud of you. Um, and then I moved to the young or the youth choir. So I went from the children's choir to the youth choir and got a solo there. And then I don't think I did the adult choir, but I still remember a lot of the songs at the adult choir because the adult choir is always the one. They got the church hype, they got all the publicity, not publicity, but they got the recognition. Where the
Right.
children's choir kind of got the look at the baby, those types of recognitions. But I still remember a lot of the verses to the songs. You hear them every once in a while. My sister and I, we get together every once in a while. We'll mock sing because my voice is not the same. Hers is not the same either. But she was a alto, I believe. Yeah, and I was a tenor. But yeah, just fun facts. A lot of good times we had in church. From the choirs to Boy Scouts to vacation Bible study, which I don't even see signs really anymore for vacation Bible study. And maybe it's where I live at now. But you used to see them. School season ended, you saw the signs going up for vacation Bible study,
Yeah.
but you just don't see it anymore.
Take a drive through the South. They're still out there.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah. There's a lot of Chick
All right,
Fil A's,
Paul.
a lot of Chick Fil A's in the South too. So
Yeah, ironically, there's Chick-fil-A is a big in Atlanta's football
yeah.
stadium, but of course the games are on Sunday, so it doesn't.
Oh,
I always wondered
uh,
about that decision to
that
put
doesn't.
Chick-fil-A
Yeah,
as
that
the
doesn't
main.
make sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Dave, thank you so much. It's
but
been a pleasure to be with you today.
absolutely, Paul. Before I let you go, as I always do with my guests, if there's anything you want to talk about or promote, feel free to do so now.
Just the Roll of Love book and the die and the journal that I've got. You can find it at rolloflove.com, ROLE of love.com. ROLL is what you do with the dice outside of you. What changes you within is that ROLE. It's in a bundle right now on my website for $29.99. It's a whole lot less than just one therapy session. That's going to last you a whole lot longer. Thank you, Dave.
Very much so. No problem. And actually, something just popped in my head. One quick question. I noticed the dye color is either monochrome or black and white. Is there a reason, or do you have a color version? Because you know how you can emphasize certain colors on the love languages. But just popped in my head. But is there a reason they're black and white, or
No, you
basically?
know what? I thought that originally I just do it black and white because for me, Dave, and it's symbolic in that way that it's a contrast from a previous
Mm,
life to now a new life. That's why it's black and white. It really was a line in the sand that was drawn that I'm not watching for
mm,
the faults of another person. I'm watching for the good of a person now. And so it really is kind of that black and white thing, but I can get it in several colors. I can get it in your favorite football team colors. I can get it in
mm.
anything like that. But for now, it's just black and white.
No, I mean that's great imagery. I didn't even think about that part of it. The contrast from what you were doing before to what you're going to do now. So yeah, no, that's a great answer. That's a great answer.
Thanks, Dave.
But
It really
thanks.
it'll change your life. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Paul, for stepping in Dave's head and have a great 2024.
Thank you. You too, Dave. Bye bye.
My favorite segment of my podcast is my GRIN, which stands for Great Reason to Be in Love with Now. Wrapping up this month of love, and once again, please tell me if I should try to get some credit, trademark, whatever, copyright for this. I swear to you, I'm the only one that says this. But anyway, wrapping up this month of love, as I call it, we talked about Valentine's Day and being a Cupid, and about moving from a trauma experience to a loving one in life so that you can have a loving relationship. But it starts with self-love. You can't truly love someone if you don't love and practice loving yourself. VeryWellMind.com published a self-improvement article in 2022 entitled 7 Ways to Practice Self-Love, written by Barbara Field. Now, according to the American Psychological Association, self-love is, quote, having regard for our own well-being and contentment. Barbara adds that, quote, self-love is not about having a grandiose sense of self or being puffed up with self-importance. Self-love means taking care of your needs and recognizing that you have value. Now, she gives 7 ways to incorporate self-love into your lifestyle. Go through them really quickly. Give my opinion. That's what I do. Number 1, prioritize your well-being and mental health. I can't see this being anything but number 1. She says your physical and mental health are directly correlated, and how you feel physically can influence how you feel mentally and emotionally. When you begin loving and caring for your body, you're directly and positively influencing your mental health too. Now she says eating and sleeping well and exercise. I feel the side eye people are giving me right now, especially with the eating and sleeping well part. More so the sleeping well part. Even working with a therapist can all go to your well-being and your mental health. Now, I will say I'm working on the sleeping part. Some days are good. Literally last night was not a good sleep night. They come and go. But I do work on the healthy eating, do work on the exercising. And I think another thing to add too is doing your wellness checks, during your physicals, your annual physicals, your screenings, doing all those things that really help you to find and recognize and identify signs that you may not be on the right path. Because you don't want to get to the point where you're looking back and saying, I wish I would have did this. I wish I'd have checked with the doctor sooner. I wish I would have eaten healthier sooner. I wish I'd have exercised more. Doing those preventative things early not only can elongate your life, but also make your mental health even better. Number 2, embrace self-compassion. When you acknowledge your mistakes and accept your imperfections with kindness and without judgment, you exhibit self-compassion. And she talks about 3 things, 3 components of this. Self-kindness, feeling kindness towards ourselves rather than judgment, criticism, or shame. The second, common humanity. Recognizing we are part of a common humanity as everyone makes mistakes. The third, mindfulness. Viewing mistakes mindfully by having a perspective and not over-identifying with our failings. Those 3 things, self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness, make up and exhibit this self-compassion that we all need so that we don't let our lows get too low or our highs even get too highs. And by doing that, staying level, staying in the moment, that helps with our self-care, our self-love. Number 3, don't compare yourself to other people. Now, this is a huge thing, and a huge portion of this conversation and topic she talked about was dealing with social comparisons and how they can cause stress. Looking at social media stresses, which have grown consistently over the past decade or two. The stresses we get comparing ourselves to people we see, we hit the little heart on Instagram, we love their stuff on Facebook, and we start comparing their body shape to our body shape, the way they live their lives to the way we live our lives. Don't do that. Don't compare yourself to other people. Compare yourself to yourself. Compare yourself to your goals. Compare yourself to what you want out of life and do the things to get there. Number 4, huge, very huge, setting boundaries. Drawing the line helps with stress management. I know I'm going to catch some slack for this one. Sometimes you have to say no to preserve your energy. Recognize your needs and carve out time for yourself. Now, I struggle with this. I struggle with boundaries. I'm a problem solver. I'm a helper. I'm a pleaser. And so many times when I should say no, I say sure. Many times when I should say this was inconvenient to me, I say no problem. And so setting boundaries and getting good at maintaining those boundaries, because it's not just about setting them, it's also about maintaining them. It's about not making caveats and special cases for people in this circle or that circle. Setting boundaries helps with self-love. Number 5, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for your past mistakes and find ways to heal. We talked about healing with our guests. A recent study found that greater forgiveness is linked to less stress and a decrease in mental health symptoms. Think about why that has to be true. How many times have you harped on a mistake you made, or you let someone take advantage of you, or you can't believe you didn't see this, or you can't believe this happened to you, and it's 4 o'clock in the morning. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. Do you think that helps with your mental health to lose sleep over things that you ultimately could not control? Probably not. So forgiving yourself for mistakes you made or mistakes other people made or intentional things that people did to you that you could not control. Key to self-love. Number 6, very, very important. Surround yourself with supportive, loving people. Absolutely. Let go of toxic, draining, and one-way friendships. The goal is to fortify yourself with healthy interactions and people who believe in you, champion you, and support you in becoming more of who you are and want to be, not less. I can't emphasize the importance of number 6. Not say that it should be number 1. It should be a lot higher if this was being a stack ranking, right? The circle you have or circles you have. And I have multiple circles in my life. Some of them overlap, some don't. And I will say the type of person I am, I pull people in and I take people out. I think you have to have that healthy, supportive, loving people in circles in your life, but recognize that sometimes the things that someone else is going through or rifts that may occur or different things that may occur, they might need to be just taken out the circle, put on the edge for a little bit, right? We can come back when this relationship is stronger. We can come back when you're not going through things that are dragging me down. We can come back when you're not making poor choices that impact me. We can come back when I don't feel a certain way, because ultimately it's about me, right? And so sometimes I gotta, sit them on a bench. We'll put them back in the game soon. But surrounding yourself with supportive, loving people who want the best for you, not less, is extremely key to seeing self-love happen and realize. Lastly, change a negative mindset. Positive thinking doesn't mean ignoring problems. Say that line again. Positive thinking does not mean ignoring problems. It means choosing to have a positive outlook as an approach to life that includes gratitude and many possibilities. Now, Paul talked about this extensively, right? That the positive thinking and the positive attitude, not focusing on the negative things, building that foundation for positivity to breed more positivity. That's important. And when you think about self-love, looking at the positive, starting with today, day 1, especially after heartache, divorce, lost your job, lost a loved one, passed away, that day 1 builds a foundation where you find positivity to build for day 2, and then day 3, and day 21, and day 57, and day 142, whatever. But thinking positively every day, building and building and building, goes an amazing way towards self-love. And so check out the article on verywellmind.com, written by Barbara Field. It's 7 ways to practice self-love. And if you can do those things, prioritize your well-being and mental health, embrace self-compassion, don't compare yourself to other people, set boundaries, forgive yourself, surround yourself with supportive and loving people, and change your negative mindset, the amount of self-love you're going to give yourself and the quality of the self-love you're going to give yourself are going to enhance and uplift your life in so many ways. I want to thank Paul Zolman for stepping into Dave's head and really having a great conversation about not only self-love, but going from a negative state, a painful state, a hurtful state, to a loving, positive state, and the ways you can do that. We've talked about love languages on this podcast before, multiple times, in fact. And that was the first time I've heard or even seen this type of game that promoted this type of thinking, where you're intentionally choosing a random love language to give to the world, give to your partner. And when you think about that, and you think about doing that every single day, not planning for this love language, but just picking a random one. Think about when you practice, you go to the gym, right? If you just do the same workouts every single day, you get used to that same pattern, right? I'm going to work on chest, and work on arms, work on abs, work on quads, and I'm out. But if you randomly pick things, I'm going to work on shoulder today, then I'm going to work on chest, then I'm going to work on quads, then work on calves, then work on back. And you do that random selection of exercises every day, after a while, your body is just like, oh, where are we getting strong today? As opposed to every day your body knows, well, I got to give 25% for the first set. I got to give, the other 25% when we get to back. And I'll save the other 50% for the rest of the episode, the rest of the exercises combined. The randomness of what you're practicing as far as a love language every single day strengthens your ability to give that love language. So great idea by Paul. Check out his website, www.roleoflove.com, ROLE of love.com. You can find him on Instagram and Twitter, Roll of Love Dice, Roll of Love Dice. So at Roll of Love Dice. On Facebook, facebook.com/Roll of Love Dice. Him personally on Instagram, you can find Paul at Paul_Zolman. So Paul_ZOLMAN. And on Facebook, facebook.com/Paul.Zolman.7. He's also on LinkedIn under Paul Zolman. Support our sponsors, SRE Solutions Inc. at www.sresolutions.org for all your PC support and troubleshooting needs, and Adapt to Adopt at www.adapttoadopt.org to give back to the youth and support those who have come through adoption or in adoption, and many programs that Adapt to Adopt has. And if you're interested in sponsoring on Dave's Head in 2024, Season 5, and beyond, reach out to me on any of my social media, and we can absolutely make it happen. Lastly, this season, I'm going to leave you with a quote to cap each episode. This quote is from Anne Hathaway. Google her if you don't know the various movies she's been in. But she says this, and I think it's appropriate. If you're not someone who has a natural and effortless love for yourself, it's hard to let go of your desire to please other people. And that's really not an ingredient for a happy life. Self-love is important. Make self-love effortless. And effect your ability to have a happy life. So creative, language, and self-love. In other words, creative love, love languages, and self-love. All great reasons to be in love with now. That's all for this episode of Dave's Head. New episodes released on the second and fourth Friday of the month. For all things Dave's Head, check out our website at daveshead.card.co. Subscribe to watch new episodes on YouTube or Spotify video, or to listen via your preferred podcast player, go to anchor.fm/Dave's Head Pod. Thank you for watching or listening. As always, enjoy life, because life should be fun. Take care.